Thank you very much. It's great to be here in the National Press Club again. We're at the 12-year anniversary of the Disclosure Project launch here in 2001. And in the intervening 12 years, a lot of water has passed under the bridge. I now have 6 grandchildren. Frightening having me as a grandfather, huh? So one of the things I wanted to do is thank some of the folks here who've done so much to help us over the years. Ambassador McDonald, who worked with President Jimmy Carter, is here. Thank you. And so many notable people. Paula Harris, who has been so instrumental in assisting with the Disclosure Project, and so many unsung heroes of the entire effort. This film you're about to see is the #1 crowd-funded film in the history of crowdfunding of any documentary, and it was due to the support of all the folks like you. There are no investors in this film. It's a documentary about disclosure, contact, and free energy. And the purpose of it is to bring out to the public the truth that has been withheld from us for so many years. Now, many of you have probably seen parts of it. I know the Huffington Post had a big article a couple weeks ago that had about 4 million people view it. But I think that when you see the film, you need to understand something I want to explain very carefully. The director, Amardeep Kalika, who won his Emmy a couple years ago for doing a documentary, knew nothing about the subject. So he's taken it from the point of view of someone who is fresh. And so what I did was I gave him everything I have. I gave him 35 digital hours of top secret witness testimony. Well, this is an hour and 45-minute, 50-minute film. All the photos and videos we have, all the top secret documents, the whole life story I have that's in the book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, which many of you have read. And so he made a film looking at it with fresh eyes, which mine aren't. I mean, I've been involved with this for 22 years. So it's an exciting film that is from the perspective of a very good filmmaker. And I really think in terms of the artistry and the filmmaking, it's probably the best film ever made on the subject. And I say that because I'm not the filmmaker. I just provided the intellectual property, as it were, or the vision. So it's really exciting. But I really want to thank all of you, because many people in this room contributed to this film. And it would not have been made without you. So thank you very much. A big round, all you contributors, yeah. Now, if you were here today I'm not going to repeat anything I shared for the former members of Congress and senators. I do want to share a few other things, however. I did not drill down on a couple of things which I think are very, very important. For many years, there have been aspersions on the internet about of some of the meetings I've had with folks like the CIA Director Woolsey and others. And I want to share with you something that was written to me setting up that meeting. So you have crystal clarity on the difference between disinformation and information. And this is from John Peterson of the Arlington Institute, dated 3 December 1993. The briefing for R. James Woolsey was on the 13th of December 1993. I talked to Woolsey this morning, and he suggested getting together over dinner. He seemed genuinely surprised. This almost certainly means, #1, there is an active attempt to be made at lower levels of government to sabotage Project Starlight, which is what it was called prior to the Disclosure Project. #2, this group almost certainly has tapped all of your phones and is aware of most of the details in your plans. And they are feeding out disinformation gathered. It goes on. It's a multi-page document. The other thing that he mentions in here, which I think is very significant, remember, of course I could only had a glimmer of this at the time, the most powerful people in the world will have a deep, compelling interest in our activities and will use everything in italics at their disposal to effect their objectives. I am having a security plan drawn up by a friend, and you should have something for you soon. In the meantime, if the portable phone in your kitchen does not have an encryption function on it, you should not use it to talk about CSETI affairs, Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And on it goes. And then he says, regarding the dinner, if you thought it was a good idea, I would like to invite down Lawrence Rockefeller and his wife to join us that evening. If he would be willing to do so, it would communicate important things to Jim, CIA Director Woolsey, and you should call him from your hotel in Las Vegas from a payphone and talk to him directly, but not to his attorney, Diamond. And so it goes. The reason I share this is that there have been things put out on the internet saying that this was not a meeting with the CIA director to discuss anything sensitive and important. However, here it is 10 days before. And one of my concerns over the last dozen years of doing this is the degree to which people in positions of responsibility will backtrack on the truth. The people that are in this film, the scientists who have come forward, the military and intelligence and corporate witnesses to UFO events and technologies, these are the courageous people that we should be very grateful for. And I think we need more of that courage in our society right now. We desperately need it. I also wanted to mention that in the run-up to this, I want to just provide an overview of some of the folks that we've been involved with meeting with and providing briefings for over the last 15 years or so. Via the Rockefeller Initiative, which all of you know about now, President Bill Clinton and his wife, First Lady Hillary Clinton, CIA Director James Woolsey, Admiral Tom Wilson, the head of Intelligence Joint Chief of Staff, with whom I visited for a couple of hours. It was a 45-minute stand-up briefing that went on for over 2 hours. An astronaut, Edgar Mitchell, was there with me, as well as some other Disclosure Project witnesses. That was in the 90s, before the Disclosure Project was known publicly. Senator Claiborne Pell, those of you who went to college who were poor like me, on Pell Grants, you could have Claiborne Pell to thank. Congressman Dan Burton and many other congressmen who were at the 1997 Disclosure background briefings for Congress. Congressman Dennis Kucinich, General Patrick Hughes, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, personal long briefing. That's a 2-hour talk about what happened at that meeting. Colonel Canola, the intelligence officer, and Bruce Ashcroft at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Foreign Aerospace Technology Center, where the Roswell remains were sent. This meeting was ordered by the head of intelligence joint staff, Admiral Kramer, over the objections of the head of intelligence for the Air Force, and he made it happen. I went from the Rockefeller Ranch directly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it goes on and on. People like Prince Charles, Prince Hans Anna von Liechtenstein, Lord Hill Norton, 5-star Admiral of the Fleet, Minister of Defense head. I sat with him in his cottage in Hampshire, and he looked at me and he said, Dr. Greer, I was head of the Ministry of Defense. I was head of the Military Committee for NATO. I was head of MI5 and MI6. No one ever told me about this. Why not? And I told him, and he was very upset, as have all these men and women that I briefed in high positions in government who have been lied to. I said, because if they told you, they might have to kill you. And he chuckled. I said, well, the truth is this. Folks like yourself, they do what's called a soul biopsy. I use a medical term. And they do an analysis to see if you're willing to go along with the secrecy. And the secrecy entails keeping from the public, not only that we're not alone, but that there are civilizations visiting us whose technologies we have studied for over 60 years and have figured out how they operate. And anyone who cares about humanity, about the earth, about the biosphere, about ending world poverty, will understand that these technologies would give us a civilization without poverty and pollution. However, it would upend and terminate the multi-hundred trillion dollar oil, gas, coal, and nuclear industry. And I said, what would you have done if you knew of such a group that was keeping this secret? He said, I wouldn't have stood for it for a bloody moment. I said, that's why they didn't tell you. That's why they didn't tell you. You would not have put up with criminal and illegal secrecy that has resulted in the state of the world today. And for that reason, you were kept in the dark. And there have been people in your position who knew, yes. Have been there CIA directors who knew, yes. Dick Helms knew. Bill Colby knew. Bush Sr. knew. However, if you're someone who hasn't come from a certain pedigree, it doesn't matter what your rank is. This is an existential threat to our democracy, and as Eisenhower pointed out, it will become a threat to our way of life and our freedom, and so it has been. And this is why we have to start a new civilization based on the truth. One of the meetings I had that was of great interest, to me at least, was with the Secretary General's family at Boutros Boutros-Ghali at the United Nations. That was primarily to discuss how do we come together as a people and decide we're going to make peaceful contact with these civilizations, and how is that going to be effectuated? And Leah Ghali, when I was doing a briefing at the United Nations, greeted me in the Great Hall at the entrance. And I was with one of my daughters, and I thought, oh, we're go through security and the scanners, and there's all this commotion, and she ushers me in. We go around the security. I guess they thought I was okay. And Mrs. Boutros Boutros-Ghali looked at me, and she said, when are you going to get this done? I was astonished. I'm a doctor in North Carolina, running an emergency department, taking care of shootings and stabbings and car wrecks and cool things like that. Well, I said, well, your husband's the head of the world, the head of the United Nations. And she says, no, it's too dangerous for Boutros. And I said, what am I, chopped liver? And the answer is yes. So I'm an insignificant person in the sense that I'm not important, and in the scheme of things, and many of these people have wanted us to do what we're doing, have wanted me to do. The senior scientist who deals with this subject at the CIA contacted me after we started these disclosure efforts in 92, 93, 94, and he had one of his associates fly in whose family founded the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. And he says, we desperately need you to do this. I said, why? He said, I'm a doctor here in an ER. They said, yes, but we think you can do it. And you and the public can make this happen. But the people who are in the system are trapped in the system. And I slowly began to understand that they were saying to me, we're free because we're not in that system. And so why don't all of us come together and exercise our God-given liberties and tell the truth about this? That was really how the Disclosure Project started and the worldwide disclosure movement. Ultimately, I ended up meeting with so many people, astronaut Gordon Cooper, Admiral Morin of the French government, who I mentioned earlier today, and the list goes on into hundreds and hundreds of these sort of senior officials. But over the course of all this, what I really have found is that uncommon courage is needed by a lot of people to turn this ship around. Not me, and not just one or two of you, but millions of people. And that's what this whole citizens effort is about. From 1997 to 2001, I vowed to work as hard as I could to pull together the best sources of intelligence willing to come forward. There's a qualifier. I have over 500 top secret guys giving me information. I only have around 100 of them on digital videotape. The others are afraid for their lives. But let's acknowledge people like John Callahan and Gordon Cooper and others who have stepped forward and have verified the truth. The other thing that I vowed to do was to do everything within my power to establish a peaceful citizens diplomatic initiative. And we call this the CE5 initiative, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where we train people to go out using very advanced and controversial ideas in consciousness and technology interfacing together and make contact with these civilizations. Something I'll say here that I didn't get to say today, and I probably won't have time this week to say officially. The genesis of the disclosure movement happened after there were 40 to 50 people on a beach in Florida with me, where we were using these technologies, using consciousness and thought and lights and electronic tones going out into space, and 4 extraterrestrial vehicles popped into the sky. And there were people there from the Air Force, one a full bird colonel. And this was just a daytime thing we did just to show people that this could be done. How did I know? Because I had contact dealing with that approach when I was 18 years old. And which is, I'm not going to go into. It's so controversial. But the point is that that made the front page of the Pensacola paper. And it got picked up by this guy who was a former head of the Army Intelligence. And a month later, he had me at a conference in Atlanta, and then he took me to a hotel room, and he said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're going to bypass the stranglehold classified programs have on this by bringing it to the people. Let the people learn to make contact." He says, "Oh my God, you cannot do that." I said, "Yes, we will." Now we have thousands of teams all over the world doing this. We have millions of people who've learned of the Disclosure Project. And the next big thing, if that's not enough, maybe that's too much. Too much already? I ain't got started yet. The next big thing is to bring out a Generation 1.0 technology, energy device, that will enable us to get off fossil fuels and nuclear power permanently as a civilization. We have them, and this film that you're going to see, all the proceeds are going to a fund to create an energy lab out near the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, so that it can be done within a year or two if we can get the funds together. Now, one thing I whispered in the ear of someone today, and I will share with you a bit of it, is that I have a computer disk that has several thousand pages of previously classified and confiscated patents. If you want to put up here for a moment the little document from the Federation of American Scientists, you're going to see that, if you go to the documents now, that there's a report done 2.5 years ago by the Federation of American Scientists saying that there are 5,135 patents that have been seized. Many of these, I guess we don't have it, many of these patents deal with energy generation. And there has been an abuse of the National Security Act that has permitted the seizure of these documents. Now, this report by Stephen Aftergood should be headline news in all the world's media. It has not been. We have to ask the question, why? Who is collaborating with this kind of secrecy that would leave us in a condition where the entire world is melting down with pollution and poverty and Mideast oil wars, one after another, when the solutions already exist but have been confiscated without the knowledge of the president and without the knowledge of Congress? This is wrong. And so the only way we're going to get around that, just like we've gotten around everything else, we come together as a people. We, not the government or Lockheed Northrop, or Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman, fund the energy technologies so that, this is about this, so that we can bring this information out and do it in a way that the whole world knows about it. Now, people have said, wouldn't that be dangerous? I said it would be if we did it secretively, like the next iPhone 6. It would be dangerous if we did it the way everyone's done it in the last 100 years. But if we do it in a way that is smart, where we learn from the lessons of history, and we do it so we're streaming the research on the internet in real time. Anything that we get is in multiple safe storage locations, and the instant we get a fully operational device that is pulling energy out of the zero-point energy field that supports the fabric of space-time, it's been proven to exist, go look it up, that is going to be released to the public, for you, for our children, and our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. All right? Now, I know I don't want to go into a very long presentation here because you want to see the movie and not me, which is rightly so. I want you to know that the film is now on the internet on video on demand at SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS, like the star system, disclosure.com. And you can also become a distributor. You can click the affiliate button and you can become a distributor. And all of it is a fundraiser, except the people who are affiliates also get some of the revenue to support your research and your network and your environmental green efforts and what have you. So this is what we want to do. We want this to go viral. So we're keeping it out of the hands of NBC Universal, Comcast right now. And we're handing it over to you folks. Because if we pull together and do that, we'll be able to not only raise the funds, but we'll be able to prevent the confiscation of the knowledge that's in this film, which is substantial. The other thing we've done is to go on our website. It says UFO evidence. You click that on. We might be able to show that. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of top secret testimony and documents of government sources and photographs and videotapes and information about the new energy and what have you, much more than could fit in an hour and 50-minute film. Why did we do that? Because the film is a portal to more learning, and we're trying to put everything we can with our volunteer staff. All right, we're doing this with very little funding, if any, for any kind of professional effort, but we're doing it the best we can. And so you can go to the website and go to that top button on the top tier with UFO evidence, and you can find all that information. People say, where is it? It's there for anyone to see. Now, one of the things I want to go into, if you click on this little body right here, everybody seen this? This has been all over the news. I want to comment on this for just a moment. This is what we call the Atacama humanoid. First of all, I don't know what it is. Every scientist has looked at it and says, oh my God, it looks like an alien. Well, perhaps. We don't know. It's a mystery. It's an enigma wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in something amazing. It may be something prosaic, but I don't believe so. And here's why. If you put up the Lockman report, I don't know, this keeps coming down. Dr. Ralph Lockman at Stanford University, who's the #1 expert in the world on skeletal dysplasias, which means skeletal abnormalities and genetic syndromes, we went to Barcelona where this little being is stored. We took exact x-rays that he requested from Stanford and brought them back, hand carried them back, as well as on a computerized disc, which is now on our website. You can see it. He looked at it and he said, well, first of all, there is no form of dwarfism or genetic defect that explains everything it's seen in this being. It has, the Lockman report's not up there either. I know we're having technical difficulties, but what you'll also see is that he says it has 10 ribs. No human has ever lived with 10 ribs. What he didn't notice, but I will point it out to you, it has 4 skull bones rather than the 6 major ones we have. It's symmetrical. And the epiphyseal plates, if you look at the x-ray, which is the growth plates. You know when you have, the growth plates in a kid and they hurt their leg? The growth plates and the bone density is that of a 6 to 8-year-old. All right, now call me crazy, but I'm just a doctor. But I can tell you, I've taken care of a lot of children that are 6 and 8-year-olds. I've never seen one 6 inches tall. This is 6 inches, 13 centimeters. What 6 to 8-year-old can live to be only 6 inches tall? Number one. Number two, how did it live? It was found in the driest place on earth, the Atacama Desert in Chile, northern Chile. It is estimated to be in many decades and probably hundreds of years old. There was no neonatal intensive care unit in Chile at that time. There may not be now. And even at the best neonatal intensive care unit in the world today, you could not keep this person, for lack of a better word, alive. So the question becomes, what is it? All right. The other thing he states is that since it doesn't conform to any known form of dwarfism, it could very possibly be a type of progeria, which is when you have a very advanced aging process. But he seriously doubted it. Now, fast forward to some of the early work. Now, this has been misinterpreted in the internet, unfortunately, not only on the Huffington Post, but also in a number of other minor news outlets, about the genetic report. I want to be very careful. And if I bore you for about 5 minutes, I apologize in advance. But this needs to be said. You need a quick course in science. Number one, keep this number in mind. A Neanderthal is 99.5% genetically identical to everyone in this room. Okay? A chimpanzee and the great apes, 96 to 97 or more percent identical genetically. This being has a big match to human genome, but it's an upright creature with a very large cranial vault, 3 times the size of our cranial vault from the eyes up. So we would expect a lot of the operative genes, if it was in this 3D dimension and it's a humanoid, to have some match. What's unusual, although nothing can be concluded yet from it, is that 9% of the genetic material is, quote, unmatching. Now, this is on a computerized run at the best lab in the world out of Stanford, and it was checked 3 times. 9%. Now, is that all computer read error? Maybe. Is it all what's called DNA junk? Perhaps. We don't know. It's going to take years to go through what the computer kicked out into the trash can of unmatched DNA to figure out what is in there. Dr. Nolan, the Stanford head of the team, doesn't know. I don't know. Neither does the folks writing at the Huffington Post. They don't know. What we know is this. It's going to take years, and at least, if we're lucky, a year or 2, to go through that, because it's 2 million base pairs of genetic material unmatched. Now, if you were dealing with my DNA or yours, and you had a lot of unmatching, you just leave it alone, because we know we're just humans. And it's just like, well, it was a computer error, or it's this or that. But when you have something that looks like that, it keeps disappearing off the screen, I apologize. What you have is something that cannot just be tossed away. Because so far, and this is something I want you to listen to extremely carefully, the genes that control for progeria, advanced aging, or dwarfism are showing no mutations. This is a 6-inch, 6 to 8-year-old. Get it? Why isn't there something in there? So this is still a mystery. Now, once the geneticists said, well, you know, there's a lot of matching, 99% is matching to human, and said it, well, human, used the word human, the media that aren't well-versed in genetic research said, oh, well, case closed. Case is just starting. It has just begun. And I can tell you that it may be years before we get an answer on this. And the other thing that's come to light is that there may be more of these. And the scientific team at Stanford and others have said if there's more than one, it is sort of case closed, that it can't just be a one-off mutation. There's something very strange going on. We're on the lead to one that may exist and have been found in Puerto Rico. There are reports that there are more of these that are in Chile, and we have videotapes and photographs of a creature that looks very similar to this one, that was a little more mature, maybe less than a foot tall, that was found in Russia, was kept alive for a number of months apparently, and died in the captivity of a rather eccentric woman. I found out about it in 1996, but too late. The FSB, which took the place of the KGB, had apparently confiscated it by then. My point in saying all this is that we have to do expeditions to the Atacama. We have to do probably a year or 2 or 3 of research. And I'll remind people that the Human Genome Project cost billions of dollars and took 10 years and thousands of scientists. We're just going into something that's basically an unknown. So we have to be very careful. I'm not saying it's ET. I'm saying we don't know. But looking at the big clinical picture, it just cannot just be a normal defected human if it lived to be 6 to 8 years of age and is only 6 inches tall. Moreover, and this gets into a little more controversial information, but hey, why not? I might as well in for a dime, in for a dollar. There have been teams of people who have gone into that area after they identified this, who met with native peoples who said, you know, there have been more of these that have been seen, and we've seen them alive running around. We've also seen luminous, sort of trans-dimensional, if you will, energy forms that look like basically like eggs or circular objects that have come down into the foothills of the Andes. And so there's a great deal of research that has to be done. An expedition to do this properly would cost probably 10 times what it costs to do this documentary. And if somebody wants to underwrite that, I'll be there with bells on. The point is, there's a great deal of mysterious information around this, and we have to be very careful to proclaim it one thing or another. People are proclaiming it ET. I'm saying we don't know quite what it is. Other people are saying, we solved the mystery because it has so much human DNA in it. No, we're not saying that either. Because there's still this 9% unmatched, which could be everything from computer read error to junk DNA to where the mystery of how this thing existed. So I just want to have all of you keep that in mind and bring you up to date on that. And finally, did that make sense to folks? I know people say I'm too professorial, but people need to learn some science. I want to finally say that this has really been a labor of love for me and my family and everyone who's been helping us. You know, I've been doing this for 23 years. When I started, imagine, you know, being a 35-year-old doctor going up to provide the first briefing to the CIA director on this. It's hard. You know, but I get emotional thinking about this meeting. Excuse me. But the CIA director, at the end of the meeting, looked at me and he said, you know, this should be disclosed. And because I'd given him a briefing, a set of action points that I also provided in the briefing for President Obama. And I said, we really need to get this under control. And I said, we need your help in disclosing this. And he looked at me, he says, well, Dr. Greer, how do we disclose that which we have no access or control over? Because the president and the CIA director, the head of intelligence joint staff, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, all had been denied access to this information after they made inquiries through the proper channels. And yet here I am with a document from the 90s. That's the first document in the briefing for Obama. I did not have this at the time. I put the briefing together for President Clinton. And this document, if you want to pull it up, is an NRO document dated July 1991. And this document is from the National Reconnaissance Office, the office that runs the super secret spy satellites. And in it, it lists a whole, and this was not declassified, but I won't say how I acquired it. I have a number of these. But look at the first few, oh, it's not up there. Okay, well, anyway, but the first few compartments: Royal Ops, Cosmic Ops, Maj Ops for Majestic, Magi Ops, Comic, its intelligence. Then it goes through an Air Force Office of Special Investigations, then a whole bunch of project code numbers, and then it gets down to some very interesting things. Pahut Mesa Military Operating Center. That's the really super secret area that's out at Nellis. People call it Area 51. Nobody in the business calls it that, by the way. Sally Corridor, Groom Lake, which has an underground facility that build anti-gravity devices based on human research as well as studying extraterrestrial reverse engineered objects. Dreamland Military Operating Center, Dreamland. That's a real place. Ground Star, Blackjack Team. Now, Blackjack Control is actually at Edwards Air Force Base near the Lockheed Skunk Works facility. Roulette Team, on and on. This is what you call actionable intelligence. And when I provided this document to an admiral, he recognized one of the compartments. And he called them up. And this is the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he said, I want to be read into this project. Read into means briefed. And the contractor, it's all done by corporate contractors, said to the admiral, yes, sir, we know who you are, but you do not have a need to know. And he said, damn it, I'm the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. How can I not have a need to know? They said, sir, we cannot and will not discuss this with you further. And they hung up on him and blocked his line. By the time astronaut Ed Mitchell and I and some of our disclosure witnesses got to his office in 1997, it was a mixture of anger and fear, because here you have prima facie evidence of what Eisenhower warned us about, that the military-industrial complex would get out of control and be a threat to our democracy. I have had too many meetings like this with members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, like Dick Bryan of Nevada, whose home state houses these facilities, who also made inquiries and was told nothing. And it goes on and on and on. And this is why I have concluded that the transformation of this mess is unlikely to come from the office of the president or from Congress or from the old media. It's going to come from you. It's going to come from people coming forward to tell the truth about what they know. It's going to be us making contact peacefully and going into space together. And it's going to be us, not Lockheed, not my uncle's old company, Northrop Grumman, not SAIC, not these big corporate beltway bandits. Those folks are not going to bring these technologies out. But if we band together as a people, we will, and we'll create a new civilization and a world of our dreams. Thank you, and God bless you. So I think they wanted to take like a quick 10-minute break if you want to take a rest stop, and then they're going to show the film. Is that the plan? Yeah? Or you want to go right into the film? Yeah? Okay, we'll go right into the film. No. I'm not running this show. Hey, someone who's producing this, I don't care.